Nation, the year isn't done yet. After reviewing the pile of atrocious nonsense that was Punk Goes Pop 4, we need something to kind of make things right. You know, maintain the duality, the whole Zen karma thing. The universal balance that is our musical society. Luckily enough, Outer Isolation was released by the band Vektor. Vektor is a band out of Arizona that is able to combine thrash metal along with some elements of progressive music, as well as some little glimmers and hints of black metal into their music. This is a band that's known for its long compositions, its extremely technical skill set, not to mention its innovation. Some of the things that you hear on this album you probably have not heard on a thrash record recently. However, these are all innovations that Vektor is going to use to become one of the most prolific and principal members of the new thrash scene. This is a band that's just sort of taking off. They're really taking the whole entire idea and the whole wave by storm. And these newcomers are definitely shaking up many 2011 Album of the Year lists, potentially even that of coverkillernation. This 51-minute long journey through 8 tracks is kind of something that you would not see. Typically in 8 tracks on a thrash album, you're expecting to see maybe a track length or a album length of anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes at the most, at the maximum. If you think back to classic albums by Megadeth and the like, you're thinking of albums that maybe last about 36 minutes, take 8 tracks, and just don't stop. They just thrash you until your neck is sore, either that or your head just falls off. This is an album that takes that simple idea and magnifies it almost by 1/2. It almost doubles it, should I say. And what it does is pretty freaking fantastic. The first thing that I must comment on are the vocals on this album. The vocals have so much intensity that it's almost unfathomable to think that these sounds are being emitted from this gentleman. And there's one track on this album, in fact, where he emits a very high-pitched scream that reminds me a lot of Angel of Death by Slayer, only with the lone exception that not only does he go higher, but also the intensity and the rabid just rage emanates from your speakers and leaves you absolutely starstruck. You have no idea what just happened, and you almost can't believe that something like that can be emitted from a gentleman. Something that almost reminds you of a vocal that you would hear on a King Diamond record. However, this record also reminds me of bands such as Vio-lence or Sacred Reich, where there seems to be a little bit of an awareness there, and also the intensity. The thrash is just absolutely just destroying your soul. Speaking of Vio-lence, I was able to just pick up one of their cassettes for $1. Vektor, however, with this album has really ramped up what they did on their previous releases and magnified it even further. They've been able to combine that dirty, that musky, that very underground ideology and that very underground production style and step it up a little bit, but at the same time they also stepped up their game. These are tracks that are not necessarily going to be the same length and perhaps specter of notion that you heard on their previous releases, which had songs that topped the 13-minute mark. However, this one does have one that cracks the 10-minute mark, another one that cracks the 8-minute mark, and a lot of them are going to be sublimely located right around the 5 to 6-minute mark, and they do not waste any time. There are dynamics on this album that are going to really take you for twists and turns that perhaps you didn't expect. There's going to be softer melodic moments that are being coupled and being kind of tossed in the middle, in the midst of just absolute thrasher pieces, where you're basically banging your head until you feel as though it's about to detach, and then they soften it up, almost to delay the inevitable, only to revert back to the thrash, revert back to that absolute neck-swinging element, to the point in which you remember the pain, you feel the pain, and you love the pain. You all of a sudden become some sort of music masochist, where this is something that you absolutely need. You are destined in order to thrash your neck off whenever listening to this release, whether it be for the first time or the 101st time. This is just what they want, and they're able to execute it flawlessly. This is probably going to be, and I'm going to issue this bold statement without even consulting what the remainder of the year looks like, this is probably going to be the last great thrasher piece of 2011. And it's only magnifying the fact that 2011 has really become a year for thrash metal. There's been a real revitalization going on over the past couple of years. However, this has been a breakout year for the genre, with releases by bands such as Onslaught, by Toxic Holocaust, just to name 2. And this is one that continues on that legacy, only is able to do it for more of an underground element. This is still a band that's just starting to really gain a mass following, almost as a cult-like following that is slowly but surely annexing in new members and exposing them to the thrash metal Kool-Aid. This is an album that will certainly take you by surprise if this is a name that you are unfamiliar with. The sounds and the things that are emitted are certainly going to really understate the underground element of this band. However, you're going to quickly understand and quickly perceive the underground element whenever the construction hits, because it is unlike a lot of the different constructions that you hear from the more modern, the more established, the more long-running thrash bands of this generation and of previous generations. If this raw intensity is able to be kept up by the band, they're going to have a long-lasting legacy of truly making thrash metal music sound just as violent, just as harrowing, just as destructive as it's meant to be. Think of it this way. The way that I'm able to describe the vocals on this album coupled with the music is as follows with this metaphor. Imagine you're going skydiving. You're 30,000 feet in the air and you jump out of this plane and you have this expectation. You have this expectation of all things going well. However, whenever you pull your ripcord and you expect your parachute to open, nothing happens. And that's whenever you realize that the package that you have, that the book bag surrounding you, that had the parachute embodied within, not only is it open and there's no parachute, but the only thing that falls out is some sort of strange comedic device. Maybe pies are flying up or something like that. Almost as though the instructor, the people whom you trusted with your life whenever you took the lessons, are now laughing at you as you fall to your death. Almost like some sort of horror movie scenario. And you think of the only thing that's going to race through your head. It's almost as though the music is really giving the perfect pictorial representation of what this would be like. Falling from 30,000 feet without a parachute, the screams that you would emit, the music, the chaos, the absolute essence, and the absolute perception that death is coming. And it's coming in a high-speed splat on whatever surface that you are damned to fall upon. This is a great album. This is a release that I really enjoyed, and it's a release that I highly recommend. The thrashers that are out there that are viewing this video will eat this for breakfast and demand seconds. Those who perhaps are not as thrash inclined, that still sample this album, will find something unique about it, and will thirst for more. Maybe not after listen number 1. However, its sublime melodies, its fantastic destructive force, and the high-pitched emitted vocals will slowly seep into their nervous system, to the point in which it also travels up to the brain and becomes part of their everyday existence. They hear it as they're attempting to fall asleep, and they have to go back. Something will continuously lead them back to this album, as though they are sheep being herded by a thrash metal shepherd. I give this release a pounding and resounding 8.5 out of 10. Sometimes the length can become a bit of a nuisance for some people. However, as an avid follower and lover of progressive music, time flies when you're having fun listening to a goddamn thrasher piece like this one.